Hey everyone, welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving headfirst into a massive and honestly deeply relevant topic. We're unpacking the Kingdom Marriage Project teachings by Felix Akaboe, and we're going to break down what marriage truly is through a biblical lens.
So, let's start with a simple but profoundly heavy question. What exactly is marriage? In our modern information age where definitions just seem to shift by the minute, getting this foundation right is absolutely crucial. It's literally the starting point for how we relate to one another on the deepest possible level.
To really get to the bottom of this, we're going to explore 5 key themes today. We'll look at a divine, lifelong covenant, the one flesh system, amplifying the shared vision, mutual ownership, and finally, we'll wrap up by navigating some very real modern marital challenges. All right, let's jump right into our first point, a divine, lifelong covenant. We really need to talk about how covenant thinking has seriously eroded in our society today. It is so easy to view relationships as just temporary social contracts, right? Like a cohabitation of convenience. It's a modern myth that treats marriage almost like a business deal you can just opt out of when things get tough. But the source material radically reframes this. Felix Akaboe points out that the biblical reality shows us marriage is an unbreakable contract. It's a divine institution established by God. It operates on a whole different set of spiritual rules.
Just think about the actual definition of a covenant for a second. Historically and biblically, we're not talking about a signed piece of paper. It is an agreement made by life, or blood. It represents a lifelong commitment where two individuals willingly lay down their independent lives to become a single family. This completely elevates marriage way above a mere social arrangement. You're binding your actual life to someone else's, and man, that requires a profound level of intentionality.
Moving on to our next big concept, the one flesh system.
So, how do two totally distinct individuals become an inseparable entity? Well, the event used this absolutely brilliant analogy. Think about making Eba. You take dry gari, you add hot water, and boom, you get Eba. And just like you absolutely cannot separate Eba back into dry gari and water, a married couple becomes a completely new, inseparable life system. It's a one-way street into something fundamentally new and beautifully complex.
As Felix perfectly puts it, in this union, two different individuals come together to form a new entity, giving birth to a new identity, a new purpose, and a new destiny. I love that. You aren't just giving up who you were, you're joining forces to create an entirely new destiny that literally did not exist before you met. It's not about losing yourself. It's about building a brand new path forward together. Okay, let's look at part 3, amplifying the shared vision.
There is this massive cultural assumption out there that marriage somehow puts a lid on your personal ambition. But the biblical model shows us something entirely different, a shift from my dream to our vision. You don't just abandon your dreams the second you say I do. Instead, your individual identity and your unique gifts actually find their ultimate expression in the greater purpose of the family. The family becomes the launch pad for those ambitions, giving them a much stronger foundation.
Going back to the source, personal ambitions are no longer pursued independently, but become a shared vision. Marriage is specifically designed to amplify what both partners bring to the table. It's a total amplifier, definitely not a silencer. When two people are truly aligned under this covenant, their individual strengths feed into a collective success that lifts up the entire household.
To put this into perspective, think about the biblical principle that 1 will chase 1,000, but 2 will put 10,000 to flight. That's a huge mathematical jump. That multiplication factor proves that stepping into a godly marriage should exponentially skyrocket your impact and success. Your combined potential isn't just double, it's massively greater than what you could do alone. You are literally scaling your life's impact through this union.
Which brings us to our fourth point, mutual ownership and sacrifice.
Now let's see how this actually plays out in the everyday dynamics of a home, especially regarding the highly debated topics of submission and lordship. Get this. Did you know the linguistic root of the biblical name Sarah actually translates to lady, which is the feminine equivalent of lord? I know, right? This surprising piece of history completely shatters the myth of one-sided subservience. It proves that in a true covenant, there is mutual ownership, where both partners are leaders sharing authority.
This ties right back to the dominion mandate in Genesis. See, God's original mandate for dominion was over the earth, not over other human beings. Meaning, a husband and wife share that leadership. It's about owning one another equally, consistently choosing what's best for the family, and practicing mutual surrender over selfishness. It takes the relationship dynamic and flips it from a competition into total collaboration.
All right, let's move into our final major section, Navigating modern marital challenges.
So now that we've laid down this solid theological framework, we really have to apply these ancient principles to our modern, everyday anxieties. During the event's open floor discussion, someone raised an incredibly practical question. How do you spot a red flag in a potential partner? And honestly, this is one of the most vital things you need to discern before entering a lifelong covenant.
Felix strongly advises taking off the rose-colored glasses here, because, let's be real, church involvement can sometimes be used to mask a person's true character. Because of that, you absolutely have to observe potential partners outside of those religious settings. Watch how they interact at work, or notice how they treat their subordinates. How do they act when they aren't trying to impress anybody? That is where their true colors are going to eventually show.
And what about relationship timelines? Listen, when it comes to pressure, you should never allow yourself to be treated as a spare tire. Beware of those strict ultimatums that try to force you into a corner. That's treating you like an optional convenience, not a lifelong partner. Instead, you've got to lean heavily into discernment. Rely on personal prayer and spiritual signs over arbitrary deadlines when you're deciding whether to move forward.
Of course, there are other complex realities we have to manage too. For instance, prioritizing family agreement is super important to avoid long-term complications down the road. Couples also need to have honest, unselfish conversations about really sensitive topics, like childbearing and surrogacy, well before they become crisis points. And crucially, Felix warns that you should never use children as the sole reason to stay in an abusive marriage. The covenant is fundamentally between the partners, and abuse destroys that very foundation.
So all of this leaves us with a really profound, provocative thought to end on today. If God looks at your marriage, what does he see? Because ultimately, the highest purpose of this union is for it to serve as a generational legacy that reflects God's glory.
Thank you so much for exploring this fascinating topic with me. If you found this breakdown helpful, please subscribe, like, share, and comment so that we can bring you more insight into the relevant topics about marriage. See you next time.